Welcome. Thank you for showing up to this webinar. This is a webinar that's a collaboration between Heylo and the U.S. Chamber of Connection. The U.S. Chamber of Connection is a nonprofit, national nonprofit focusing on connecting people and ending loneliness in our society. And Heylo, if you are not currently using the platform, it is a platform made for community builders. So today, in this webinar, we're going to dive into building a leadership team for your community. And every month, we decide to tackle a different topic and bring on different experts to talk about some of these topics. And this topic here is something that I am really passionate about, and I'm going to be talking about this one. So you're stuck with me. Oh, thank you for giving me a heart. Beautiful. So if you're just arriving and joining here, if you haven't already, send a message in the chat with your community, where you're from, what you're doing, and if you have any leaders. Awesome. Okay. So nice to meet you. My name is Gabriel. I've been building community for over 10 years now, and I've been building communities along a range of different verticals. Started out building social running communities, but also neighborhood communities, creative collectives, and some would say that I am obsessed with building communities, and it is true. So a bit about me and my past life. In 2017, I started building this organization called Midnight Runners, and it's a global running community in 18 cities around the world, run totally by 250 captains around the globe. Give me a little reaction if you've heard of that community before. Okay, we've heard a couple people hear of that. So it's currently in 5 continents and 18 cities, and spread throughout the globe. And I spent 7 years moving every 3 to 4 months to a new city and starting a new chapter of this. So my, KPIs, so to speak, were after 90 days, I would have a team of 10 to 15 volunteers who understood the ethos, understood how the community worked, understood how to recruit new volunteers, and have hundreds of attendees at the weekly events. And so these, after doing this for multiple years in a row, I realized that there's not just, it's not a science, but there is a playbook to building these communities. And the goal was not just to organize these events, but it was actually to build a flourishing community that would run its own. And I really believe the best leaders are people who build other leaders and build a community that is running on its own and giving opportunity for people to contribute. So I had the lucky job of being able to move to Bogota, Milan, Tokyo, and many other cities around the world, starting these communities. And now I'm in San Francisco. I've been here for 2 years, and I've been really enjoying building communities around some of my other passions. I've been building a beautiful neighborhood community. It's called the Corona Heights Coffee Club, and I invite neighbors to come up to the top of the hill and bring their own cup of coffee. And I've met some really incredible humans and neighbors there. I've built an art community, and I'm also building a community around one of my other passions, which is community building. Wow, so meta. And this is actually an initiative that I'm doing in line with the U.S. Chamber of Connection. And so if you are a community builder and you want to be a part of a community builders network to talk with other community builders who understand where you're coming from, share resources, tactics, and techniques, please reach out to me and I can add you to that network. We're expanding across the nation. So now it's my role as the global head of community at Heylo. And I'm very lucky that I get to work with all these incredible communities around the globe. And there's some really, really impressive community builders that use Heylo, and I learn from them every day. And I'm really lucky that I get to share some of these best practices with other community leaders from around the globe. So from moving from city to city, building communities in different verticals, and talking to community builders around the globe, there's a lot of best practices that I see, and there's a lot to talk about. But I think the most important thing that we need to address as community builders, and like I see a lot of people falling into the trap of organizing everything themselves, is building a volunteer team. This is by far the most important part about community building in my experience, because I really think that once you build a team, then everything else can come. You can focus larger on the bigger picture. You can grow your community because you have more people helping and supporting. But it is very difficult. So before we jump into the agenda, can I just get like a quick reactions? Has anyone thumbs up if you've you feel like you've built a strong leadership team? Okay, we get some thumbs down. We get some thumbs up. Good. Awesome. Heather, Matt, that's great. I'm going to call on you afterwards for also some thoughts and tips. Jackie, incredible. Okay, so I've broken it down into a few different points here. We're going to talk about how and why to choose the right co-leaders. We're going to talk about how to bring people into the fold, and we're going to talk about how to set expectations. It's really important. And giving true ownership. And after that, team building, delegation, managing that team. So, really important framing. We're going to talk about bringing on co-leaders, not volunteers. Can anyone tell me the difference in their mind between like a co-leader and volunteer? Feel free to dump it in the chat or like turn on your camera and just shout it out here. Okay, so building together from the start. Amazing, Heather. Yes, so I really like to think that the difference between volunteers and co-leaders is like, one, volunteers, it's like, hey, can you help set up some chairs? And often people will be there for that event. They'll help support, or it's help with X task, right? Versus co-creators is build this community with us. And this is like the crucial change in framing here that we're going to talk about today. Amazing, Jackie. Co-leader, not to be confused with co-owner or co-founder. That's a hard lesson. Co-leaders take more initiative and ownership. Yes. Matthew, responsibility. Bob, responsibility. Correct. Julie, a co-leader is someone who thinks and acts to sustain. Nailed it. A volunteer signs up for one time or occasional thing. That is a great way of putting it. And so that is a critical framing for this entire conversation. And I'm going to talk about why to choose the right co-leaders. And speaking to some of you that I've spoken to on the call here, I know that some have found out some of the hard way of choosing the wrong co-leaders, or this is really, really important. So when you bring on co-leaders, they become your cultural architecture of your community. And I feel like this is the best way of steering the direction culturally of your community, of the way your community looks, acts, and feels. It becomes a living extension of your mission. So these people will ultimately be your ambassadors of your community. They will be singing the praises of your community, and you need to make sure that they're aligned with your mission. And if you choose poorly, that means it can turn into something that you don't want. And this is difficult. And I've seen communities kind of go up and down in terms of engagement or varying in culture because they brought on the wrong co-leaders. And I've seen entire communities that have been massive, flourishing, and die because the co-leaders that were taking the initiative on after the co-founders were not the right fit, and the community died. Okay, so choosing the right co-leaders. Lead with the mission. People sign on to the mission. People return for the humans, not the agenda of what you're doing. Lead with the mission. And also, when you're building a co-leader team, think about representation. This really matters, right? I remember I was talking to a leader of a parents' hiking group, and they wanted to get parents out and get the parents to bring their kids out as well. And it's a pretty big community that operates on Heylo. And I was talking to the leader. She says, I'm really struggling. It's like, I'm only getting moms out and none of the dads want to come along. And I think this is really important. This is important for the kids. There should be engagement with the fathers, but none of the dads want to come along. And I asked her, it's like, well, how many dads do you have on the leadership team? So, well, we have a team of 6 women on the leadership team, 6 moms. And I said, that's a perfect place to start. So your community becomes a reflection of the leaders that you have, because these are the people that are the ambassadors, and they're standing up for what your community stands for. So that means everything from racial background to religious background to job, like what are they doing for work? This is important to think about. Consistency does not equal leadership. I want to get a quick reaction here. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Has anyone brought on someone as a leader because they just because they're there all the time? Yeah. Yes, and oops. And sometimes it works. You can bring on a leader who shows up all the time, or is an individual or a member that shows up all the time. That sometimes works, but consistency doesn't mean that they are going to be a good leader for your community necessarily. So I really heavily suggest that leaders think before doing that. And I think there's a gut reaction sometimes, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this. Give me an emoji reaction if this aligns with you. But when you're organizing an event, you feel really overwhelmed. You're like, I just need help. I need help, and I need to bring someone on now because I'm showing up early. I'm setting up all the chairs myself, or I'm doing the Instagram and the planning and so when the first person that has been showing up since day one shows up and say, hey, I can help. I can, give me something. I can do it. The instinct is saying, yes, okay, please take it. Please help me. Has anyone felt that instinct of just being overwhelmed and just anyone, please help? Okay, we get a few people here. I have felt that, and even after 10 years of building community, I felt that at an event that I hosted the other day. I was like, wow, geez, we need more. And I'm just gonna mute you. Beautiful. And I think that when you're in that state, it's almost like a community builder's fight or flight. And you have to say, no, it's really important to think about who I bring on, because it's a lot easier to bring someone on than it is to have a conversation about them not being a good fit for your community. And okay, I also think it's important to have a balance of archetypes within your community, depending on what your community is, your community values. Everything should tie back to the mission, but this is just an example of some of the archetypes that I've built out. And this might help for you and a mental structure. And I really think that these archetypes should be different for every single community. But this is the way that I think about recruiting on people when I'm building a community. It's like, okay, I need someone who's a social butterfly. It's like when people come in, they are like welcoming everyone. They're being able to like introduce new people. You want someone who's the mama bear, who's like kind and caring. They're like the person who's checking in with the leaders. They're going to persons sitting in the corner and be like, hey, I noticed you're like acting a bit different today. Or like, how you doing? And you also want the big energy one. If you need the group's energy up high, you need some of these high energy individuals. You also need the creative ones who are able to either come and take photos or content or think of creative event ideas. These are really important to have in your leadership team. Does this resonate with anyone? Just quick reactions here. Awesome. I know Harry is a very creative one in here. Okay. Where to look for co-leaders. So, controversial opinion. Don't just look inside of your community. Just don't just look at the people that are showing up to your events. I'd really encourage you to be constantly on the lookout. So you should know the kind of archetype that you're looking for, the type of personality that you're looking for. And if you're meeting them at a house party or meeting them at a coffee shop or another event, even at work, right? You meet some people in the world and you look for new members of your community and look for new leaders specifically. And these new leaders will bring in new perspectives. They'll bring in new networks and a new life. And I think this is important. Okay, so I look for these leaders in the wild, and I actually have a technique to bring these leaders into the fold. And so some of my friends who I've met when building these communities have told me when I've explained this process to them that I am sociopathic. And I'm like doing it too strategically. And it's like, actually, this is also the same way that you build friends. The same way that you bring in a leader into the inner circles is the same way that you build friends. So the first off, once you identify these co-leaders, you got to trust your gut. And these are the people that you think that you are aspirational for your community, that you want to be the leaders in your community. And then you work in building trust. Has anyone done like a short onboarding time from a leader to from meeting someone to being a leader? Short onboarding time, like a couple weeks? No? So I actually, if you have done this right, it actually allows you to do a quicker onboarding time because you've already built trust with them. Talk about how I build trust. So I use small intentional gatherings as like opportunities for key members and future co-leaders to mingle. And so that could be, I'll organize like a picnic in a park, or I'll organize a run with just a handful of people. And these are actually some of the strongest community building tools, right? You choose a location, you choose an event, invite some friends along, go bowling, and invite that one person that you met at that party that you think would be a really potential good community leader, and you invite them into the fold. You introduce them to some other people in your community. This is before even inviting them to the community event. And I build that trust with them. Something else I do is, after I've invited them to an event, when they show up to an event, they feel like they're a part of the community already because they've met a lot of the other key members. They've met some of the co-leaders. So we've done that small intentional gathering with some of those key members, and then they show up to the, larger event. Maybe it's a craft night, or maybe it's, a run, or etc. They've already met some of those key members, so they feel like they're a part of it. And something else I do in order to build trust, and this is where my friends are like, okay, Gabe, this is weird. You ask for help. And a small ask for help, it actually triggers a type of cognitive dissonance. So even if it's an ask like, hey, can you pick up the case of water from a store and bring it to the event? That'd be awesome. Or it is like, hey, I was wondering if you could show up a bit early and like help me set up these chairs, right? Just something small. And it triggers this type of cognitive dissonance where if you say yes and help contribute, it makes you feel more like you belong in that group. And so I have been known to intentionally forget something and ask someone to bring it, even though I could have myself, because it gives a small opportunity for someone to contribute. And we have a couple questions in the chat here. How do you communicate with small gatherings? Is it completely separate from the community, or do you say like, come meet us for some people from the community? It's a good question. Usually I don't necessarily identify that it is a thing from the community. It's just a social gathering. How you hang out with friends. Say, hey, we're going to the bar, or hey, we're going bowling. Invite people out. The power of invitation is really, really strong. And it's really important to utilize that. And because these actually smaller gatherings, I think, are more impactful than your main community event. I think these are more impactful for building your community than your main community event, which in the long run. Okay, do we have any other questions here? Beautiful. And last one I'll talk about directly here is make the ask. So make the ask. This is when you ask them to become a part of the community. And this is when you make the ask to say, hey, I want you to become a part of building this with us. Not, I want you to be like, show up to these events. That's different. I want you to be a part of building this with us. And the best way to bring them into the fold really, really, really quickly is delegating, giving them ownership. So when you're making the ask, make it personal and specific. I have found not a lot of luck with just sending like an email blast, being like, hey, we're looking for co-leaders. Is anyone interested? That's spreading a wide net. And sometimes you might get good responses. But I think the best way of doing it is approaching them, having a moment of one-on-one conversation, ideally in person, if not on the phone, and say, hey, I want you to be a part of this. And that is a very different than receiving an email blast and them having to fill out a form. So I think making these asks personal and specific are important. And then you start with a mission. It's like, we're building this community, not, hey, I need you to show up every week to help with setup. Why? Why are we doing this? You're offering ownership, not just errands. So it's like, I want you to be in charge of all of our hiking events, or I want you to be in charge of managing the Heylo group and engaging with people online, or I want you to be in charge of the Instagram or venue relationships. And delegation is your job as a leader to delegate. It's going to take you longer at the start to delegate than is just to do it yourself. But as I said, the best leaders build other leaders. So you need to take that time to teach them and help them grow. And the final thing with delegation is your ego. You know, your community is your baby. Does anyone else feel like their community when they like bring it to life, like it's your baby? I'm gonna like smash this heart button. Like I feel like every community I build is like feels like it's my baby. I want to protect it. And the hardest thing is to give ownership and delegate some tasks. And initially, it's not going to be as good as you had pictured it. But if it's not as good as like you haven't spent the time teaching them. So the best leaders are able to delegate, give true ownership, and make people feel part of something rather than doing it all themselves. So that constant, like, conscious reflection and engagement with your ego is important with this delegation. Okay, does this here resonate with anyone? Does this give me some emojis? Does this slide hit anything? Was it helpful? Any other questions?
Will you share the slides afterward, Gabriel?
Yes, I will.
I'm kind of madly scribbling this down, and I wish I could just get the slides afterwards. So thank you.
I'll share the slides afterwards. I'll also share the recording. Okay, so no other questions, expectations. So I think a lot of leaders will get to this point of where they're making ask, be like, be part of this community with us, like build this with us. But then there's nothing after that. People really don't know how to engage. How do they engage? What are the expectations? What are their responsibilities? It's important to define, because if you don't define it, you'll find that some of your leaders will start to fade, disappear, because they're like, oh, I don't really know how to contribute. And you have to set it clear ways of how you expect them to contribute. So I also like to define a commitment period. And the reason why I define like a commitment period, whether it's 3 months or 6 months, it avoids gradual disengagement over time. From quick emojis here, has anyone brought on a leader or co-leader or volunteer and they've been like super high engaged and then just drifted off? Yep. Yeah, I feel like this happened to almost every community builder. And so that's where this setting like a clear commitment period becomes really, really critical. When you set a clear commitment period, it means that after a certain amount of time, so like let's say after 6 months, you're able to do a check-in. So I like to do a check-in with all my leaders every 6 months and say, hey, how you doing? Do you still want to be a part of this? It's an opt-in rather than an opt-out. And it's important to do this because like you're not going to do this forever. Like I don't expect you to be a volunteer in this knitting community, running community, whatever. I don't expect you to be leading this when you're 80 years old. So at some point, you're going to have to take a step back. And so setting these like clear commitment periods gives an opportunity for people to to opt out. Say like, okay, I volunteered for 6 months. Awesome. And that should be celebrated. You should, throw a party. You should acknowledge them in front of your community. You should celebrate that they are stepping down because they've contributed their time and engaged. It also then shows and displays for other leaders that they can step down gracefully. And this is really important because otherwise people will teeter off. There's like, oh, I want to be involved, but but life has changed. I had a kid, I moved a bit further away, or et cetera, so I can't commit the same time commitment. People want to be involved, but unless you have that check-in, you're not going to have the opportunity. They're not going to have the opportunity to actually say, like, actually, yeah, you're right. Like, I should probably step back. We should bring on another leader in my place. And then assigning ownership is critical, and clarifying their responsibilities. Like, what do they do? Heather here says, because I lead a women's group, we often have leadership committee members who go on maternity leave during their term, which we welcome and celebrate. Definitely important to acknowledge what they have to contribute. Amazing. And Julian Coy here from the Code Collective is a 3-month non-activity is grounds for offboarding. Yes, that's great. So if you're not involved for 3 months, then you need to have a check-in. I think these clear commitment periods are really important. So when you do a check-in, you say, hey, so like you actually haven't been showing up to 50% of the events, you haven't been arriving earlier. And these people probably know already. They know that they should probably step back, and you need to address that early, or else you're going to be, again, doing everything yourself. Here's a quick example of how basic this can be. This is something that I did for my creative community. I asked for a 3-month commitment, and I asked to engage in the group chat, attend at least 50% of the events, arrive before the start time, and also, like, I expect them to be a facilitator. You need to be curating the vibe. If there's something going wrong, if there's someone needs help, you should be the person that's stepping up and facilitating that. And the organization, you should be helping organize these events, etc. So I set all these expectations and why we set these expectations. So it doesn't need to be complicated. For Midnight Runners, the global community that I built, we had a very built out onboarding deck, but it doesn't need to be that complicated. It can be one pager like this. Okay, we have a question here. Emily, what about when people have checked out, but when approached, they say that they want to be a leader, but they still don't re-engage? So that's why these commitments are really important. So having this minimum engagement here, attend at least 50% of events, that's pretty low. Like, I expect them actually to attend all of the events. You're a leader, you're hosting these events alongside me. But if they drop below that threshold, and that threshold is set intentionally at like the bare minimum, right? Obviously there's exceptions, but then you can point to this and say, like, hey, have you been hitting these expectations that we agreed upon at the start? And then if they say they want to re-engage, it's like, okay, like, what can we do to like re-engage you? Do you think that you can commit to this for the next month? We'll check in a month. That's what I would do. So your role as the main leader, the lead of your community, you need to check in with your co-leaders. And that's your job. And to dive a bit more into that, is your job as the main lead. This is an example structure of how I structured my communities. So I have two like main leaders, and several other co-leaders. You can scale depending on how large your community is, what the events are looking like, etc. But 2 main co-leaders, which focus on vision, delegation, year planning, partnerships, and they check in with the volunteers. So that is their duty, is to delegate. Ideally, you get to a state with your community. This is like the most advanced community builders I've seen, is they're not actually doing the day-to-day operations, right? They're not doing the event planning. They're not doing the social media, right? Like, they're delegating. The best leaders of the communities are delegating and checking in with their co-leaders. That is a role of itself. Is like every week you say, hey, everyone, like, these are the tasks for the week. This is what we have to do. These is who's doing it. And please don't make me check in with you, but I will, to make sure that you're, posting on the Instagram, or you're posting the email blast on the Heylo, etc. Does anyone have any questions here? I hope that answered your question there, Emily. Pause for questions. Hit an emoji if that resonated with you. Awesome. Okay, and finally, invest in your leaders. So it doesn't always mean that you need to pay people. So if you're a profit generating community, so if you've organized events and charge tickets for them or have memberships, it doesn't mean you need to pay your leaders. You can, and every community is different, but I think that for most communities, I would say most communities on here are completely volunteer led. Yes, correct. Do we have a thumbs up? Most are volunteer led. So I think it's really important to show values. Like, these people are giving their time into this, similar to you. But as the main leader, you hold something that is really powerful: social capital. Don't underestimate this. It's like, highlight your leaders within the community, whether it's just acknowledging them in front of a crowd, featuring them on Instagram. This is important in introducing them to other people, connecting them with other sponsors. Amazing. Jackie, it's good to hear. Next is rewarding your volunteers. So if you're able to get brands or discounts, that's one way of rewarding volunteers. But also you can reward your volunteers with other things. If it's not like a budget for special experiences, it could just be an excursion. Your time intentionally spending with these individuals is important. So something that I like to do is like maybe a year retreat just with the volunteers. And on a more frequent basis, I take the team building very seriously, is really recognizing them with doing team dinners, weekend trips, and connect as the organizer team. So you're almost intentionally, as a community builder, you need to intentionally curate two communities. Your leadership team really need to make sure it's tight. You have those moments where you're not just organizing, but you're also connecting amongst each other, so that when you do have these planning meetings, then those conversations are easier, right? Because it's easier to ask for help from someone who you know a little better, and be like, hey, you got to start posting on Instagram more, or you have to we got to start welcoming people at the front door of this event. You need to be in charge of that, right? That's an easier conversation to have. So you should be intentionally thinking about building your larger community and building your leadership team community, because it is the golden part of that. Julie here, our community is in very early stages still, and I think I have chosen the wrong co-leaders. I'm sensing other potential co-leaders hesitating to be involved because of this. Any advice on how to steer the ship? Wow, great question. So I've actually had to do this with some communities, is have difficult conversations with some co-leaders to step down. And as a host, I think this is really important. You need to have those hard conversations, because you sense it. You understand your vibe, your ethos, your vision. And if these co-leaders are not aligning with your vision, or flaking, or not setting up expectations, you need to have a conversation with them. And you can say hey, I'm going to be checking with every leader, and I want to make sure we're aligned, and have these honest conversations. They're hard, but you have to. And I really hope you do. And then you feel empowered to bring on the right co-leaders. I know it's not the the best answer. There's no magic wand, but having those one-on-one intentional conversations with them and asking them either to step back in a good manner. I hope that helps. Okay. Next is ongoing leadership management. Check in regularly. Make it clear. This is a check-in. When I check in, I'll like pull them off to the side. It doesn't need to be a full-on, we're having an hour-long video call. It could be like at the bar after the event, or it can be like hanging out at someone's house and say like, hey, we're going to do a check-in right now. But just saying like, this is the check-in. We're going to take 5 minutes, have like some intentional like one-on-one space where you're away from the crowd, or ideally you can meet up for coffee. That's the best situation. I was like, how you doing? Is there anything else you want to do? Like, do you feel like you're hitting the minimum expectations? Do you want to still be a part of this? Do you still want to contribute? Do you have any ideas? How are you feeling about the team dynamics? That is so important as a leader. Check in with those co-leaders. And you got to create a supportive environment and recognize when someone should step down. Ideally, these check-ins should nip it in the bud before they even trickle off. So this is my tip for ongoing leader management. Like, set a cadence for like, okay, this week I'm going to be checking in with all the co-leaders and making sure everyone still wants to recommit. Thoughts on formal agreements on paper for protection. I've never personally done a formal agreement, but I know communities that have, and so I think that can be helpful. I think whatever you do, you need like a full-on opt-in. Is like, do you want to commit to this? These are the expectations, and that makes it a lot easier for people to operate. You got to give them a box to work within. And team meetings, really important. How many people have like meetings with their team? You know, you go to a quiet space, it's not just a bar, or like, you know, you have to, like, you sit down, you bring out your computer, you bring out the spreadsheets, and we're talking about, you know, archetypes there. You always need a team member who's like a freak in the sheets, the spreadsheets, to really help with that. It's important for planning. Okay. And let's connect. If you have any questions, we're gonna jump into a quick Q&A here. We have another 10, 11 minutes. Connect with me on LinkedIn, my Instagram. I give tips online on Heylo for community builders. And if you are interested in learning about Heylo or using Heylo for your community, let me know, reach out. Now, let's do a quick Q&A. Does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to share what they're doing with their community and bring up a certain scenario?
I have a question. And also thank you for all of this. You are such a master of your art and craft. It's a total pleasure to be able to learn from you. So thank you for spending your time. I mean, this presentation is a culmination of your like decade of doing this work. So you're a rock star. Thank you.
Shucks.
Yeah. And so my question, one thing that I am trying to think through for our community is like, and I'm curious your experience, your thoughts on it, and also from anyone else here on the group too. When you're thinking about co-leads, like, do you think about, I need a co-lead who specifically is only ever doing social media, or like that's kind of their expertise, or someone else who does like event planning, someone else who does, setting up the room for the events? Like, do you think about finding and identifying co-leads for kind of specific things like that, or just, hey, we've got a team of 5 people who all rock it and we all switch off or kind of flow a little more? I'm curious what your thoughts are on role types.
I really think that you should play to people's strengths, but I don't think that you should bring on a leader just to do one thing. Especially like, you're not going to bring on a leader that is just in charge of setting up the event beforehand, right? And if someone is like managing the Instagram, you also hope that this person has similar skills in order to hold themselves within the community, right? So like, I think you should be thinking about first, like how do they interact with the community? What, like, do they align with the mission? Like, do they, are they aligned with your ethos? And ideally, they also can have a strength in one of these skills, right? So like if you're bringing on a photographer for all my communities with Midnight Runners, we have a photographer position. But it was also important that this photographer got along with the team, right? They also would lead events and help with exercises. Like they also understood the other elements of the community there. And that goes with any role. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, it's like the bare minimum is the alignment on vision and values and vibe check and all that, and skills and gifts that come with it and can support the community in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've also, like with several different communities, we've like rotated responsibilities. And I think it's good that everyone should be able to kind of like see what other person's doing to have some sort of understanding. But you will see that some people have like heavy preference. Like some people are like, I don't want to touch Instagram. Do not make me do that. Other people really enjoy it. Some people really love the planning and the scheduling. Some people really love the venue relationships, etc. Some people love the partnerships. So if you have someone who's like, oh, I'm like going to focus on partnerships here with other communities, with brands, relationships, yeah. Lean into their strengths. And ideally, as a leader, you should be finding their strengths and helping them support them in the way that they want to grow.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Michaela, if you don't mind, to give a bit of a message about what she's going to be talking about the webinar next month.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to. Sorry, I'm off camera. I'm
Spot here.
not a morning person and very sleep deprived, so not looking my best, but I'm here. Yeah, I'm super excited. Thanks, Gabe, for inviting me to be a part of the next webinar. We're going to be talking about welcoming new members and kind of building a sense of belonging from the beginning. Something that I'm really passionate about and try to infuse as much as I can in my community is just the power of beginnings and how you welcome people, how you find people actually, and from the start, who want to be a part of your community and bring them into the fold. Yeah, I think the way you begin and the way you welcome people is just so critical to how they experience the community from there on. And there's lots you can do after that too, of course. But yeah, we'll be spending time chatting about that.
So one of the reasons why I asked Michaela is I actually have a couple friends that are a part of her community. And when they come back from that onboarding experience, they're like, wow, this is special. And ideally, like every community member should say like, you want people to feel like that. And you want people to feel like they belong. And so that onboarding is like, it's setting the standard of that you expect for them to like, how to engage as a member. Like what is the ethos of the community? It also gives them like an onboarding cohort to come along with. So it's like, oh, there's other new people here. I'm not the outsider, right? And so Michaela does a great job really intentionally bringing people in and making people feel welcome right from the get-go. So I'm really excited to hear her presentation next month. So with that, thank you very much.